In the United States, the National Electrical Code, or NEC, requires that wall receptacles be installed firstly every 12 feet along walls, measured along the floor line, secondly in bathrooms, within 3 feet of the edge of the sink, thirdly in kitchens, under cabinets, within 12 inches of the countertop, and fourthly in hallways, within 6 feet of both ends. Receptacles must be at least 15 inches above the floor and no higher than 5 feet. Receptacles must be flush with the wall surface or have a faceplate that covers the opening. The ground plug on a 3-prong outlet is designed to provide a pathway for electrical current to flow to the ground in the event of a fault. This prevents the user from being shocked. While the NEC does not specify the orientation of the ground plug, it is generally considered best practice to place it facing down. This ensures that the ground pin makes contact with the ground terminal and the plug first, providing the best possible electrical path. The NEC does not require that the prongs on a 3-prong outlet face up or down. However, it is recommended to orient the prongs in a way that minimizes the risk of accidental contact with live terminals. This typically means orienting the points of the prongs up, away from the user's fingers. The placement of wall receptacles should complement the overall design of the room. Receptacles should be placed in convenient locations, but not so visibly as to detract from the aesthetics of the space. Consider placing receptacles behind furniture or artwork to minimize their visibility. Also, use tamper-resistant receptacles in areas where children may be present. Consider using ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, in areas with water sources such as bathrooms and kitchens. Avoid overloading outlets with multiple plugs and regularly inspect receptacles for damage or loose connections. To further clarify some of the details of the NEC requirements, let's consider the specific rules and reasoning behind them. The requirement for receptacles every 12 feet along walls is intended to ensure that appliance cords can reach an outlet without needing extension cords, which can be a safety hazard if used improperly. This spacing minimizes the likelihood of overloading circuits or creating tripping hazards. In bathrooms, the rule requiring receptacles within 3 feet of the sink addresses the need for convenient access to power for items like hair dryers and electric shavers. However, due to the proximity to water, these receptacles must be GFCI protected to prevent electrical shock. The kitchen requirement of receptacles under cabinets and within 12 inches of the countertop reflects the frequent use of countertop appliances in this area. This placement provides easy access to power without cluttering the countertop with cords. Similar to bathrooms, these receptacles should also be GFCI protected. Hallways require receptacles within 6 feet of both ends to provide convenient access to power for lighting and other devices. This ensures that hallways are well lit and safe to navigate. The height requirement of at least 15 inches above the floor is intended to keep receptacles out of reach of small children and prevent damage from vacuum cleaners or other floor-level activities. The 5-foot maximum height ensures that receptacles are accessible to all users, including those with disabilities. The requirement for receptacles to be flush with the wall surface or have a faceplate is a safety measure to prevent accidental contact with live terminals and to protect the wiring from damage. When considering grounding, it is important to understand the purpose of the ground wire. In the event of a fall, the ground wire provides a low-resistance path for electrical current to flow back to the source, tripping the circuit breaker and cutting off power. This prevents the metal parts of appliances from becoming energized, which could cause a shock. While the NEC does not mandate the orientation of the ground plug, placing it facing down is a common practice for several reasons. Firstly, it provides a more direct path to ground, as gravity assists in maintaining contact between the ground pin and the ground terminal. Secondly, if an object were to fall onto the plug, it is less likely to bridge the live terminals if the ground pin is at the bottom. As for prong orientation, the NEC does not specify whether the prong should face up or down. However, it is generally recommended to orient the prongs in a way that minimizes the risk of accidental contact with live terminals. This usually means pointing the prongs upward, away from the user's fingers. Aesthetics also play a role in receptacle placement. Receptacles should be placed in locations that are convenient but not overly conspicuous. Consider placing them behind furniture or artwork to minimize their visual impact. Additionally, it is important to use tamper-resistant receptacles in areas where children may be present. These receptacles have internal shutters that prevent foreign objects from being inserted, reducing the risk of electrical shock. In areas with water sources, such as bathrooms and kitchens, GFCIs are essential. GFCIs monitor the current flowing in a circuit and quickly cut off power if a ground fault is detected, preventing electrical shock. It is also important to avoid overloading outlets with multiple plugs. Overloading can cause the circuit breaker to trip or, in more severe cases, lead to a fire. Regularly inspect receptacles for damage or loose connections. Damaged or loose receptacles should be replaced immediately to prevent electrical hazards. When installing or replacing receptacles, it is crucial to follow all applicable electrical codes and safety guidelines. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a qualified electrician. The NEC provides a comprehensive set of rules and guidelines for electrical installations. It is updated every 3 years to reflect changes in technology and safety practices. Familiarizing yourself with the NEC can help you ensure that your electrical system is safe and compliant. Furthermore, understanding the different types of receptacles and their applications is important. For example, standard 15 amp receptacles are suitable for most general-purpose applications. However, 20 amp receptacles are required for certain high-demand appliances. Additionally, there are various specialty receptacles, such as those with surge protection or USB ports. When choosing receptacles, consider the specific needs of the area where they will be installed. In addition to the NEC, local building codes may also have specific requirements for receptacle placement. Be sure to check with your local building department to ensure that your installation complies with all applicable codes. Proper receptacle placement is essential for electrical safety and convenience. By following the NEC and other relevant guidelines, you can ensure that your electrical system is safe, efficient, and aesthetically pleasing. Let's delve further into the practical aspects of installing wall receptacles and addressing some common scenarios. Firstly, consider the tools you'll need. Essential tools include a voltage tester, screwdriver set, wire stripper, wire connectors, and a level. Before starting any electrical work, always turn off the power to the circuit at the breaker box. Use a voltage tester to confirm that the power is off before proceeding. When removing an old receptacle, carefully disconnect the wires, noting their positions. Typically, black wires connect to the brass terminals, white wires connect to the silver terminals, and the ground wire connects to the green terminal. When installing a new receptacle, connect the wires in the same manner. Use wire connectors to secure the wires to the terminals. Ensure that the connections are tight and that no bare wire is exposed. When installing a receptacle in a new location, you'll need to run wiring from an existing circuit. This can be done by tapping into an existing receptacle or by running a new circuit from the breaker box. If you're not comfortable running new wiring, it's best to hire a qualified electrician. When installing a receptacle in a finished wall, you'll need to cut a hole for the receptacle box. Use a drywall saw or a utility knife to carefully cut the hole, making sure it's the correct size for the box. Secure the receptacle box to the wall using screws or nails. When installing a receptacle in a bathroom or kitchen, be sure to use a GFCI receptacle. GFCI receptacles have a test and reset button and are designed to protect against electrical shock in wet environments. When installing a receptacle outdoors, be sure to use a weatherproof receptacle and cover. Weatherproof receptacles are designed to protect against rain, snow, and other weather conditions. When installing a receptacle in a garage, consider using a heavy-duty receptacle with a higher amperage rating. This will allow you to power tools and other equipment without overloading the circuit. When installing a receptacle in a workshop, consider using a combination receptacle with both standard outlets and USB ports. This will allow you to charge your electronic devices while working. When installing a receptacle in a home office, consider using a surge-protected receptacle. This will protect your electronic equipment from power surges. When installing a receptacle in a bedroom, consider using a tamper-resistant receptacle. This will protect children from inserting objects into the outlets. When installing a receptacle in a living room, consider using a receptacle with a dimmer switch. This will allow you to control the brightness of the lights in the room. When installing a receptacle in a dining room, consider using a receptacle with a built-in timer. This will allow you to automatically turn on and off the lights in the room. When installing a receptacle in a hallway, consider using a receptacle with a night light. This will provide illumination in the hallway at night. When installing a receptacle in a laundry room, consider using a receptacle with a higher voltage rating. This will allow you to power appliances such as washing machines and dryers. When installing a receptacle in a basement, consider using a receptacle with a moisture sensor. This will alert you if there is moisture in the area. When installing a receptacle in an attic, consider using a receptacle with a temperature sensor. This will alert you if there is a temperature change in the area. When installing a receptacle in a crawl space, consider using a receptacle with a motion sensor. This will turn on the lights automatically when someone enters the crawl space. When installing a receptacle in a shed, consider using a receptacle with a solar panel. This will allow you to power the receptacle using solar energy. When installing a receptacle in a greenhouse, consider using a receptacle with a humidity sensor. This will alert you if there is high humidity in the area. When installing a receptacle in a barn, consider using a receptacle with a rodent repellent. This will prevent rodents from damaging the receptacle. When installing a receptacle in a chicken coop, consider using a receptacle with a heat lamp. This will provide heat for the chickens during cold weather. When installing a receptacle in a dog house, consider using a receptacle with a heated pad. This will provide warmth for the dog during cold weather. When installing a receptacle in a birdhouse, consider using a receptacle with a light sensor. This will turn on the lights automatically at night. When installing a receptacle in a treehouse, consider using a receptacle with a rope and pulley system. This will allow you to raise and lower the receptacle as needed. When installing a receptacle in a boathouse, consider using a receptacle with a waterproof cover. This will protect the receptacle from water damage. When installing a receptacle in a mobile home, consider using a receptacle with a special locking mechanism. This will prevent the receptacle from coming loose during transport. When installing a receptacle in a recreational vehicle, consider using a receptacle with a built-in inverter. This will allow you to power the receptacle using the vehicle's battery. When installing a receptacle in a tiny house, consider using a receptacle with a space-saving design. This will maximize the amount of space in the tiny house. Always consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that your electrical installation is safe and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. Understanding the principles of electrical safety and following best practices is crucial for protecting yourself and your property from electrical hazards. Remember that working with electricity can be dangerous, and it's always best to err on the side of caution. If you're not sure how to do something, consult with a professional.